Have you ever stopped to think about why some countries that are just overflowing with natural resources are poor, while other countries with practically nothing in the ground are incredibly rich? It's one of the biggest questions in economics, and the answer, which we're going to dig into using Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics, pretty much changes how you see the world.
All right, so let's jump right into the heart of this paradox. It seems like common sense, right? A country's wealth must come from what it has. Its oil, its diamonds, its fertile land. But if that was the whole story, then how on earth do you explain this?
Just look at these numbers. It's kind of stunning. Venezuela has natural resources per person valued at several times what Japan has. And yet, Japan's real income per person is way, way higher than Venezuela's. And it's the exact same story with Uruguay and Switzerland. This tells you something absolutely crucial. Whatever the answer is, it's not natural resources. So this brings us to what economists call the resource paradox. The core idea is that a nation's wealth isn't really about what it has, but about what it does with what it has.
According to our source, the real game changer is a country's economic system. We're talking about the rules, the incentives, the whole setup that decides how to use scarce resources. That is the fundamental difference between poverty and prosperity. So, how does an economy even begin to organize that massive, complicated task?
Well, one of the most powerful ways this happens is through what's known as a price-coordinated market. And it's best to think of this as a kind of bottom-up coordination, not a top-down command system.
You have to realize, prices aren't just random numbers on a tag. They're like little messengers, constantly carrying vital information all over the world. A high price is screaming, "Hey, we need more of this stuff over here." A low price is whispering, "We've got enough of this for now." It's this incredible system for sharing knowledge that works without anyone at all being in charge. The scale of it is just mind-boggling.
I mean, let's make this real for a second. Think about what you're wearing right now. Maybe your shoes came from Italy.
Perhaps your slacks were put together in Canada.
And that car you drive? Assembled in Japan. So who coordinated all that? Who was the mastermind who told the rancher in Argentina, the tanner in Italy, the factory worker, and the shipping company to all work together just for you? The answer is nobody. Prices did it. And I love this analogy. It perfectly captures the idea. Just like water will naturally find its way to the lowest point, resources, we're talking about money, labor, raw materials, are constantly flowing toward where they're needed most. It's this dynamic, self-correcting dance.
Okay, but what about the other way of doing things? What if we tried to get some really smart people together to just plan it all out rationally? Well, this brings us to the fundamental problem with central planning.
This is an incredible admission, especially because it's coming from economists who were inside the Soviet system. They knew firsthand that it was an impossible task. A central planner would need to know what millions of different people want, what resources are available everywhere at every moment, and all of that information is constantly changing. It's a knowledge problem that you just can't solve.
So the real difference here, the crucial point, is feedback. In a market, you get constant feedback. Profits tell you you're doing something right. Losses force you to change your plan or go out of business. But in a planned system, that feedback is gone. It's replaced by quotas and top-down orders. Mistakes can go on for years and years because the people making them don't personally feel the consequences. The public does.
So what happens when we try to force some of that top-down planning onto a market system? Well, that's when you enter the wild world of unintended consequences, and there's no better example than price controls.
It's a chain reaction that's just incredibly predictable. A government, usually with good intentions, decides to make something more affordable by setting a maximum price. But what that does is short-circuit the price signal. Suddenly, producers have less reason to make the thing, but consumers have way more reason to want it. And the result? Boom, a shortage. And wherever you find a shortage, a black market almost always pops up to fill the gap. And you might be thinking, oh, a black market, that's just some small fringe thing. Well, how big can they actually get? Let me just give you one number, 10,000.
What's 10,000? In the Soviet Union, the official state-run market offered fewer than 1,000 video tiles for people to watch. But the illegal black market, it offered nearly 10,000. That's 10 times the variety. It's such a powerful example of how human demand will always find a way, even when planners try to stamp it out.
And this all leads us to the final and maybe the most important takeaway from this whole explainer. And it's this critical difference between incentives and intentions.
It's just human nature. When we see an economic problem, our first instinct is often to look for a villain.
When prices are high, we blame a greedy seller. When there's a housing shortage, we look for a villainous landlord. We're hardwired to look for someone's intention as the root cause.
And Sowell uses this powerful analogy for it. He says that blaming economic problems on things like greed is like ancient people saying the trees are swaying because of an invisible spirit. They're missing the real, systemic force at play, the wind. It's mistaking a simple intention for a complex cause.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you come across an economic issue, whether it's high prices or shortages or unemployment, what's your first instinct? Do you look for the person to blame? Or do you take a step back and ask, what are the incentives at play here? How might they be producing this result that nobody actually intended? Asking that second question, well, that's the first step toward really understanding the economics of reality.